Hey, welcome everyone, I'm Joko, and in this new introduction we're looking at Anm2 files and how to animate. Now as far as I know, there's a single tutorial out there that explains how to use Anm2s and all their components. I'll try to go step by step over what each thing does and basically all that, but for now you need to understand how to create an Anm2. Now, I personally never ever create an Anm2. What I usually do is just go to the river files, go to effects and grab the Anm2. Say I want to make a Gaper variant. I'll search for Gaper and copy this over. Or just go to an old mod of mine and grab an Anm2 from there. I never create an Anm2 from scratch because it's just a pain, and I would recommend you never do either. Now, I picked Monstro as my test subject today to tell you how to animate. But first, let's go over each of the little windows here. So first and most importantly, we have the main screen. Now here is where your enemy will be rendering. Let me just create a new frame here. That is... I picked the wrong monster for this because I have no idea how to actually animate this. Whatever. Here's where everything happens. Here's where the magic happens. Now, on this window right here is when you can modify where this little box is and what it does. So, for example, here you say it's this red circle. You can increase that red circle by increasing the width or height. Now, a basic rule of thumb that you have to know is that Isaac usually operates in multiples of 8. So a Spritesheet can be 8 times 8, can be 16 times 16, 24 times 24, 32 times 32, 48. There's usually never a 40 times 40. It's really rare. After 32, it's usually just multiples of 16. So 48, 64, 96, 128, and usually they just go up to 128 because any further and they are just huge. So if I had to guess, sorry, I have no hold the fuck. This is probably 4 squares. So 128. I messed up. 128 and 64. No, I picked absolutely the wrong enemy. Sorry for that. I'm back and I have an actual enemy now that I can use. So, as I was saying, Isaac usually operates more than multiples of 8, it's multiples of 16. You're usually not going to see 8 times 8. What you're going to see though is 16 times 16, 24 times 24, and 32 times 32. These are the most common, and also 48 times 48 sometimes. For bosses, what is usually used, as you can see here, is 64 times 64. Here you can see a clear representation. So that's what these two values do. With crop, you can change the frame. So let's say I want this. I add 64 since that's the width of my frame. Now you can make this number whatever you want. You can put 32 and have this abomination in here. That's fine by any means. You can also modify the Y value, so you go down or you go, well, I wouldn't recommend going up because this right here is illegal. Anyway, now for PositionX. PositionX, unlike here, is actually represented in the little thing, the display. So you have these two values. Position X, you can move the entity to the right by using positive values and to the left by using negative values. Pretty simple. They also have a setting, so if you click this little thing here, it resets. Position Y is the same. Positive values go down and negative values go up. And as you're wondering, yes, this works the same for Y. Now there's pivot. Pivot is this little thingy right here, this little cross. The pivot is basically what is used to have the center of the enemy. So for example, here I put the pivot in 32, 48, but if you be like 16, you can see how it moves here. It can be 0, it can be 64, 32. You can also make this 32 to have the entity truly center, or 64 to have it floating in the air. So for example, where this comes in play is mainly rotation. So let's say I want to rotate by 90 degrees. See where the pivot is? Well, if I rotate, this is not the rotation. If I rotate, this is going to rotate over the pivot. As you can see, it rotates over here. In comparison, if I make the pivot 32 times 32 and I rotate, it's going to rotate over the center. As you can see, the pivot is crucial to making your entity behave properly in the game. Some enemies like flies usually have a higher pivot, so they fly like this, but if you do rotate them, they go nuts. And that's basically about everything for the pivots. Now scale is pretty straightforward. Now Isaac animating uses a lot of scale tricks. So for example, let's say you want I haven't gone here. Let's take this slowly. I'm heading over the most complicated thing right here, and that's wrong. Okay, let's put this window here on pause. Okay. There's this window right here, which is incomplete. It's still incomplete. These values are usually not used at all. The center view value appears to be pretty useful for capturing keys or whatever. Animation overlay, you can have animation overlays to test stuff, but it's not really the big of a deal. If you wanna see what it does, let's make this new animation and change the pivot to 64. And you can see here how if I change this, it renders on top. It won't do anything in game. This is just for debugging, nothing special. There's a few things like the transparency. I don't actually know what this does. Oh, the transparency of the animation overlay. I'm done. Of course. But as I said, that's just for debugging, so don't worry too much about it. And there's disabled root transform. I'm not actually too sure what it is. Let's say, yeah, this negates the root animation, which I wouldn't recommend using at any point because it can break. Always keep the root animation as the 0, 0, 100, 100 visible, and all these values. Always keep the root as default. Now the pivot, you see the pivot right here. You can hide that. No, wait. Oh no, never mind. That's for overlays. I will go into detail about those later. I'm stupid. Not even I know how this works. Sorry. I never use this thing on top because really it's not useful most of the time. So the pivot is just to see the pivot of the thing right here, but you can always see it here, so there's not much point. And hide axis, which honestly, why would you do this? There's a show grid, which is pretty useless too. And this is to change the size of the grid. Nothing special. And there's a zoom option. I usually recommend having 400 to see how it looks fine. Or you want to animate how it would look in the game, you use 200. This is almost a 1-to-1 ratio to how the enemy looks in the game. And background, well, this is pretty much in this thing. You can make the background whatever you want. I just use this because it's soothing to my eyes, but you can use whatever color you want. Now up for these tools. Now these tools are mostly for this window. Let me again make this over here, make this over here. So this is for selecting things in this screen thingy, and yeah, nothing much. Now this tool right here is to move your let me reset this thing because it's annoying. Wait, what happened to... Oh right, I moved it. So yeah, sorry about that. This tool is to move the thing in here. It's pretty pointless because you are most likely never going to move the sprite in the display. You're mostly going to use these values one by one to get pixel perfect, but it's there if you want to use it. Now there's scaling. This one again pretty pointless because you can just use these values, but yeah, you can scale with this. I'm not even sure how it works. So you can stretch and you can squash, stretch, squash, and elongate. So not a lot of times. Now here it's bugged. For some dumb reason it shows decimal. You cannot use decimals in this animation editor. They just don't work. They round down. Never use decimal. It's just going to show something here, but on the game it's going to do absolutely nothing. This tool, rotation, again pretty pointless if you can just use this value over here. This one is the one I use all the time because I can move the actual display. This one doesn't do anything for the animation, it just moves the display. Now there's draw. This is used again. Here you can draw in your sprite. If you want to draw your sprite in the animation editor, you can. I would definitely do not recommend it because it's kinda pointless when you can just open a graphic editor. You also have the eraser and the color picker. Yeah, all of these are pretty pointless. The main tool I use, and the main tool you probably will use as well, is the move display pan. That's what it's called. So next, over here, which you'll be using likely, I'm gonna extend just so you can see better. There's a square here as you saw earlier, and there's an option to show grid and snap to grid. Now this is mainly used for if you have a sprite sheet you don't want to do the values. Over here you can snap to grid. I have to do it as 8 times 8 because it's 64. So now let's say I use resize. I can actually use snap to grid to animate this. Is it 64 times 64? No. I actually have no idea where this starts because it's not saying crop outside. Now it is. Okay, so you can do this. This is still not. How? Now, okay, sorry, I'm stupid. Now 64 and 64. You can animate like that. I don't recommend it really. It's annoying. I have no idea what this is. I've never used it. Anyway. Oh, that's actually a pretty useful tool. I've never noticed it was here. Background, you can show the border and you can make it transparent. I do recommend using the border. It's pretty useful when animating, even if you are just using this display right here, it's pretty useful to know the border. I probably won't ever disable this again. I can't show this further. Now there's center view. It's pretty much the same as here. And the background color, you can also change it. See this, I rather keep it as gray because it's easier to follow. Not this gray though. Not this gray either. Was it actually this one? I think I messed up. Whatever. Yeah, that's about it for this menu right here. Now I'm gonna try to not fuck it up hard. Something like this. The next menu is the Spritesheet menu. Now this is what you use to load any sprites into your mod. There's a few things. There's add. You can add sprites. Let's say I go to button magic and add this sprite. Now I don't use this sprite, so you can click remove unused and it gets rid of it because it's not using here. There's select all if you want to replace them all, reload them all, or whatever. There's select none, which is something. There's a save feature. I guess if you edit here, you can save. There's also replace, which I usually do to change the sprite sheet. So let's say I want this, I can hit replace and it'll replace the thing. I guess however example we do use with Dingle, but you get the idea. Sadly I cannot read what this says, but it's the event window. The event is used for actual triggers that are used in the code, so you can add an event here and you can use in the code where is okay here if sprite is event triggered, event name, then do code. That's basically what it does. So yeah, this doesn't have much things to it. It's just add and remove and use. Oh, okay, I guess I will have this all ugly now. Okay, so now there's the animations. Now you saw me use this earlier. You can use this to add new animations. You can use it to duplicate animations, which is pretty handy when doing a lot of work. You can merge. I've never actually used this option. I have no idea what I'll do. I have no idea what a pen prepend replace yeah, ignore to. I have no idea what a pen or prepend means. I've never actually used this setting. I never even knew it existed until now. It probably has a niche. I don't know where it is, and I'm not gonna waste my time in explaining because I don't know. There's also default animation, which is the animation that will play if you don't state in the code what animation should play. And lastly but not least, there is remove, which deletes animations. You can also use hotkeys like delete. No, you actually can't. Sorry. And for the last thing, there's the animation. The timeline. Here it says here. Here is where you add the frames, you add layers, you remove layers. Now I go one by one, or what every one of these does. So firstly, animation length. You can use a mouse wheel to increase or decrease animation length. You can use the arrow keys to increase, press these buttons, or you can write. Now if you just write it, it won't do anything. You have to hit and not enter, you have to update it manually. It's kinda dumb. If you hit enter, nothing happens. If you leave, nothing happens. You need to re-update this, but it's useful. There's play, which of course plays animation. There's insert frame, which as you saw earlier makes a new frame. Usually it copies the last frame, so we'll see shortly if I insert frame, it copies the last frame you use. Now there's delete frame as well, which as you may have guessed, it deletes the frame. Now here I didn't show this, but I'll go to bake later. There's fit animation length. Oh, this is actually pretty handy. So let's say your animation is like this long and you don't want to go like I have to manually adjust it. You can just do this. I never used this option, I never even knew it existed, but now what is new? So there's animation length, which I already explained, and there's loop. Now this value is for the game only. So in the game, whenever you play an animation, it will play from frame 0 until the end and it will stop. You can make it loop in the game without having to do any checks by just pressing this little thing. But if you press this, you cannot check if the animation was finished, so be careful. If you add the loop, then you can not check if sprite. I should probably comment this. Is finished. That's the thing, you cannot check if the sprite is finished if you added a loop, but it's pretty useful for idle animation especially. Author, I never touch this, but you can change it if you want, I guess. Use sound, huh? That's actually interesting. I've never used sounds in here, never. It would have been smart probably to animate some things, but let's say where's here? Now I have no idea how this works. Oh, it plays a sound at the start of the thing. Oh, whatever, then it's not as useful as I thought. Anyway, bake. So first, to understand bake, we have to understand how interpolation works. So let's say, for example, I want to rotate this guy 90 degrees. Well, if you want to go from here, you can do something like this and then rotate 20 and then another 20 and so on, and it go like that. But you can also use interpolation, which I recommend using basically all the time. So in this case, you can change the rotation here to 90 and you can add interpolation. What interpolation does is it makes the animation smooth. It interpolates both frames so that it goes from this point, which is 0, to this point, which is 90, without you having to animate manually. Now if you want to tweak values manually from here, that's where the bake option comes into play. You can use bake, and here you have this option. For example, I can bake into intervals of 2. I actually don't really know what these things are. Run rotation, run round scale. Oh yeah, so you don't get like 1.5 frames or 23.2 rotation or something like that. So this rounds it. If you bake, you get these frames. The animation will still play similar, a little slower, but this could be fixed by baking into an interval of 1. And now the animation is basically the same as if I hadn't baked. So that's what bake is for. Now if you want, you can bake. So you change this, for example, to a green thing. It flashes green for a random reason while it's still that's a thing. Now I don't think there's a anti-bake thing. You can't merge frames as far as I know. But that's about it for this little bar. Now for this one, there's layer names for your sprites. You can add a second layer. Say for example you want to have a dingle always singing. Wait, how much is this? It's 32, 92. Let's say you want to have a dingle always singing. So you have that, and that's your overlay, and they work in terms of priority. The one that is at the very bottom is at the very back of the animation, and the one that is at the very top is at the very front of the animation. You can also remove layers. Now the interesting part comes in here. There's blood guide and overlay effect. I never use this, and it's so wrong because you need these things for custom enemies. If you want to have a custom boss, you need to have this blood guide. For example, if I go to here, let's look for monster. It should be ID 20 here. So as you can see on the death animation, he has all of these, and you can see how it contracts and it explodes. Now you need these to have your bosses, because if you don't have this little null animation, you will basically error or warn every time your boss is killed. So you need at the very least one frame for the blood guide. And same for the overlay effect. Overlay effects is used for, I can show right here. You see the little fire thing? That's an overlay effect. If you don't have an overlay effect, your enemy is never going to show that overlay, and it's going to error. So you also need this, which is usually something like this, right above the boss head by some pixels. I don't know exactly. Let's say 16. Let's say 8 frames above the enemy's head. And yeah, that's basically what it is. The overlay effect is required on every single enemy. If you don't add an overlay effect, you're messing up big time. Same with the blood guide, at least the blood guide for bosses. Enemies do not require a blood guide, only bosses. Now if you're starting a new thing and you don't have these overlays, you can always click here, and where it says null, let me check real quick here. So there's these that are like a little star. As I said, you can make it a null layer and name it overlay effect. It's basically the same thing. You can add it on your own and it works the same. Now this one, I have actually not know where it is. Oh, this one is for the blood guide. The blue one is for the blood guide, as you saw the other time. The overlay effect is for the overlay. I don't think you actually have to name it the same. You just need to use the null and the rect layers. So actually I think that's everything for the tools. You need to use the overlay for that, for the status effects, and you need to have the blood guide for... Oh no, never mind. No, the rect is a square that does something. Have no idea what it does. No, yeah, you need to name them like they are in the vanilla files. You can add effects like this too. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't bother explaining, and you can also remove unused like you can here. Now that's about it for the basics of animating. Let me take a sip of water. Now into more complex stuff, um, Isaac has a very interesting way of animating enemies. What it does is, instead of wasting so many space in sprite sheets, even if you see here it has like a lot, every single one of these sprites is different from the other. The reason is, in Isaac you can animate pretty freely with a single frame. Let's say you want Dingo to have an idle animation. If you're really talented, you can use a single frame in the animation to animate. So let's show what I mean. You can use a technique that is called stretching and squashing. So for example, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, let's say 90, and extend this to 120. Now you see here how it bounces. Now I can bounce back to normal, and you see how it bounces down and up, down and up. And there you go, that's an idle animation with a single frame. Of course it's a bit too quick. Oh, something I forgot to explain. Isaac runs at 60 FPS, however the Anm2 editor will be here. So when you wanna edit in the Animate editor, you want to use 45 frames per second, 45 FPS to animate. So you get the closest thing to what it looked like in the game. Let me change this. Yeah, this is what it basically look inside of the game. As you can see, it's a pretty smooth animation. It can get pretty tiresome if you just use this, but squashing and stretching is the key to animating in Isaac. There's another niche. You can render GIFs with this thing. Generates GIF animation. Now again, let's just showcase real quick what happens. Let me generate a GIF animation of this on 45 FPS. You'll see how it glitches out. Let me go here. Let's see the GIF or GIF or whatever you want to pronounce it. Here it is. Hopefully I can open it with photos. Yeah, you see it's really fast. You see how it goes here? Now look at this. It's super fast. Now when rendering GIF animation you need to use 30 FPS. Now I know it's confusing. What you want to do is to wait. For animating you want to use 45, and for rendering you want to use 30. Now why is that? Let's just look at the product. Let's render. And let's increase back to 45. Now let's check how this looks. As you can see, they are identical. So whenever you wanna render at 30 FPS, just so it outputs like it would look inside of the game. Now you can do way more stuff with just squashing and stretching. You can do like a charge animation. Let's try to do something like that in here. Let's do this. Something like this, and let's probably squash even further. This is probably too much. And you can do something like this, and then a last frame where it basically well, I made this as a shoot animation, but I kinda suck. You can now let's pick a frame. Let's say, so how much is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 64 times. Don't be ashamed of doing this. By the way, there's no shame. So now you have a poop animation. He shits on the fucking floor. Now let's maybe imagine you want this attack to make him spawn creep. There you go. Two individual frames. One, and 2. And you got this animation where he spawns creep. Now it's pretty bare bones because I'm not gonna spend too much time polishing it. But you probably get the basics of how to... Heck, you can even do something like this. Wait, no. I'm stupid. Yeah, you can probably get the idea. It's basically just squashing and stretching until you get a smooth animation. It takes time to master. Not even I master it. As you can see, this animation is pretty bare bones. I can probably extend it a little bit longer. And then go back to this. Yeah, this looks smoother. As you can see, 2 frames is all it took to make this animation. 2 frames. So if you're good enough at using the Anm2 editor, you can spare yourself from a lot of trouble doing the animation. For example, here some of these are actually a little bit different, but they probably don't warrant being their own sprites. You could, like, I guess it looks a bit more dynamic, but you can achieve a pretty similar effect by just using the squash and stretch. So whenever you're making a mod, take this into heavy consideration. Remember, 2 frames is all it took. Sorry, not 2 frames, 2 sprites is all it took to make this animation. 2 sprites. I know it's pretty lame, the animation, but you can do better with enough experience and effort. You can spare yourself from making a lot of frames like this Spritesheet has if you just master this setup. And I think that's about it. I went over all of the quirks of the Anm2 editor and explained a little bit of the basics of how to animate. Really, animation is mostly based off scale. Sure, you want to do positions as well and all that, but mainly doing these dynamic animations requires the use of scaling. So mastering scaling is what you need to do. Now there's another thing. Usually the game breaks the Anm2 editor, so I highly recommend having a copy of your layout.data. Just grab the thing you have here and copy it over here. I won't because I don't want to replace it. But there, if your file corrupts, you can just copy this and paste it over here. It is prone to crashing and getting corrupted, so always have a backup. I have this set up because it fits my computer and it looks good in my opinion. You can customize yours by using here allow undock and then moving everything around. You can create a mess. So that's specifically why you need to create a layout.data backup, because if you mess up, you cannot just unmess up. Well, maybe if you delete the layout.data. Let me test. Let me see if deleting this thing actually makes it so it oh god, restarts from scratch. Yeah, it actually does. So yeah, you can delete the layout date .dat whatever to prevent that. For now, I'm gonna re-add it here. And now if I go back, you'll see how it how I updated back. Or didn't. Okay, game. View want. Sure. Yeah, now it's kinda back. Oh, this is an old copy, right? Well, I can show this allow undock option. You can move stuff around, and it's pretty handy. Oh my shit! Okay, don't. This thing is jank. Jank as balls. Let's just pretend this didn't happen. And anyway, that's about it from the Anm2 tutorial. I actually took way longer than I expected. 40 minutes. What? Why? How? But yeah, I explained every single bit. Well, I didn't explain some stuff. I'm gonna fix this really just right now. It doesn't cost literally anything. Here there's playback, always loop. You can that's actually interesting. You can make this play only when you want. I always have that disabled, I mean enabled, because it's better for me. There's a wizard which you can generate an animation from grid. It's interesting. Let me show it. So, oh god, this is so gross. Even though it's virtually the same layout. Here, you can generate an animation from grid if you start at 0. Rows. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns. And there's 1, 2, well, there's 4. Oh, no, wait, 8. I'm count. I don't know what the delay is. I don't actually know how this works. Oh, the count is the amount of frames. That's weird. So count, there's, I guess, 64. Okay, yeah, I can generate animation, and now this should put all the things here. It's kind of useful depending on what you're doing. For example, if you're doing the animation, you can sorry, you can generate the animation from Oh, calculator, please. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 64 times 5. Okay, this is an easy. 32. Okay, because 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry. 64 times 4. No clue actually. I suck at maths. $256. Sure. And it's actually here, 256. The pivot stays the same. Rows, columns is the same. And count, you actually just use 8. 24. Yeah, and you got the animation. I know it took longer than anticipated, but because I'd never used this tool before, but it can be useful as proven right here. There's change all frame. This one is pretty useful. Now let's say you mess up, and you actually have like wait, can I not? Let's say you generated a GIF animation, but let's say you generated a GIF animation, but you mess up and put 32 here. Well, you can fix that, no problem. Well, it would be probably faster to go back and redo it, but let's say you don't want to do it because you already spent the time polishing the animation and whatever. So you can go here, change all frame properties, and change the pivot Y to 48. Just and boop. This tool is pretty straightforward to use. You just hit the thing you want to do and write a number. It's really pretty straightforward to use. There's a from selected frame, so it only happens from the selected frame and do whatever you specify. Pretty, you know. And that's about it. There's a single extra feature I did not mention, and that's that you can edit these things as an XML. As you can see, this is basically an XML. It has tags and whatever. You can animate via code if you want. I wouldn't recommend unless you're like doing, for example, oh no, I put 48 and I wanted to do 64, so you can do here and replace with 64, something like that. Just match the whole word, and yeah, you can basically replace all the entries, and that's way faster than other things. It's niche, but you can find some use, or maybe you just like animating via XML. But that's about it for this new tutorial or introduction. Now after this I'm actually going to do a for real tutorial explaining how to do startup items. I have no idea when I will publish it or when I will record it, because I'll probably be busy for the next few days, but I'll try to post the XML introduction and the Anm2 introduction soon, hopefully before Tuesday. Today is 17, hopefully before Tuesday 19, I think it is. And by then I'll probably be super busy, but I'll try to record the startup, the start item thing. For now, that's everything I have to say. almost 45 minutes, no, more than 45 minutes. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned something, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Go follow me on Twitter for more updates. Join my Discord server to get notified about future tutorials and mods I make. And thank you for watching again. See you in the next video, mod showcase, tutorial, whatever. See ya.